Welcome to Entomology, the study of insects. In this presentation, you'll get a brief introduction to what insects are. So sit back, relax, and let's get started to get acquainted with insects as we compare them with other invertebrates and discuss some of the diagnostic features that characterize insects. There are lots of creepy crawlers out there, but could you pick out which of these are insects and which aren't? And explain why? But before we talk about what makes an insect, let's explore some other related groups of animals. Arthropods are the larger group of animals that insects belong to. As invertebrates, none of these have a backbone, with vertebrae, like we do, to support our bodies. Instead, their hardened shell or exoskeleton supports the muscles and internal organs. The major characteristics that all of these animals have in common is that they have a number of body segments and have jointed appendages, unlike some of their relatives that do not. The group is divided into many different groups, but we'll only focus on the 5 most common ones that gardeners are likely to encounter. Crustaceans are a group of arthropods that many people are already familiar with from the beach or maybe a seafood restaurant. It includes crabs, shrimp, lobsters, and barnacles, and some other marine critters. Although most of these live in the ocean or other water bodies, there is one terrestrial crustacean that lives in our backyards, the sowbug or pillbug, a small gray animal which can roll up into an almost perfect ball as a defense mechanism. Crustaceans all have 2 main body regions, although that may not be apparent to the casual observer as some regions appear segmented. They have a variable number of appendages, but all of them are biramous, meaning they're divided into 2 parts, which is most apparent in the claws of the crabs in these pictures. And most of them are primarily aquatic, so they have gills to breathe. The next group are the arachnids, which includes a long list of 8-legged creatures, which for the average person the most familiar are the spiders and maybe the mites, ticks, and scorpions. All of these creatures are characterized by having 2 main body regions and 4 pairs or a total of 8 legs. They are lacking in antennae and wings, and unlike the crustaceans, none live in aquatic environments. The millipedes are a small group of elongated, many-segmented animals whose segments are not organized into body regions like the crustaceans or arachnids are. Their bodies are often, but not always, rounded, and they all have 2 pairs of legs arising from each segment except the head, which has no appendages. It's this large number of legs, with 4 legs per segment times 11 to 100 segments, that gives rise to the name milli, which means 1,000 in Latin, and pederis, meaning foot, although none of them actually have 1,000 legs. These creatures are usually found in damp places, moving slowly around, feeding on decaying organic matter. The centipedes also have an elongated body with many segments, but unlike the millipedes, they're typically a flattened profile rather than rounded, and always have just 1 pair of legs per segment, so they have 2 legs instead of 4 that the millipedes have. This smaller number of legs, at least in comparison to the millipedes with their supposed 1,000 feet, engendered the name centipede, meaning 100 in Latin. The number of legs actually varies considerably, from fewer than 20 to over 300. In contrast to the millipedes, these creatures are quite active and will move very quickly if disturbed. This is because they are all predators, feeding on earthworms, insects, and other small animals, and need to be fast in order to catch their prey. They also have venom in order to subdue their prey and can inflict a painful bite, sometimes erroneously referred to as a sting. Although the bite is very painful, it is unlikely to be fatal to adults, and the smaller centipedes usually can't puncture human skin. Now, finally, we get to the insects, the largest group of arthropods. Unlike all of the other groups, the insect body is divided into 3 main regions. The first part, the head, contains most of the sensory organs, including the eyes, mouthparts, and antennae. The second region, the thorax, which is composed of 3 segments, is the center of locomotion, as this is where the legs and wings attach. The final region is the abdomen. This typically has 11 to 12 segments and generally houses the digestive and reproductive parts. Insects have 6 legs arranged in 3 pairs, with each pair originating from each of the 3 thoracic segments. This is probably the easiest characteristic to see in order to distinguish these animals from the arachnids that have 8 legs and the other groups that have variable numbers or many more legs. The legs, of course, are used for walking, but in many cases they have been modified for slightly different functions. In some cases, they function as springs for jumping. Others have been modified for digging or for hunting, as in the raptorial legs of the mantids that grasp their prey. Many bees have their hind or middle legs adapted to carry pollen that they collect from flowers to take back to their nests. And there are many other examples of how insect legs have been modified to accomplish specific tasks. But the most extreme example is in the scale insects that have such a sedentary lifestyle that they don't need legs for anything. So after the initial stage that hatches from the egg, the crawler stage that can move around, they stick their mouth parts into a plant, and when they molt to the next stage, they don't waste any resources making legs. So after that first instar, they're legless. Insects all have a pair of antennae for sensing the world around them. These arise from the front of the head, but in some insects they may be quite small, so may not be apparent at a casual glance. Just like with the legs, insect antennae are rather variable, with different numbers of segments and functions. The structure of the antennae has been modified depending on whether they are used for touching, feeling vibrations, essentially hearing, detecting molecules in the air, essentially smelling, or other purposes. They may be long or short, knobbed or bristle-like, somewhat rigid or quite flexible. And finally, the most distinctive characteristic of insects that distinguishes them from all other arthropods are their wings. They are the only group of invertebrates known to have evolved flight. The basic arrangement is 4 wings with 1 pair each arising from the second and third thoracic segments. The wings only occur on adult insects. Immatures never have fully developed wings. In some cases, the wings are only present in one sex, generally the male, or are selectively lost, such as in the non-reproductive workers of ants and termites, or are produced only at particular times in the life cycle, as with aphids that become winged in order to disperse, but generally do not have wings. Insect wings are outgrowths of the insect exoskeleton that are thin membranes strengthened with a system of veins. Insects use their wings to fly, using muscular contractions to pull either directly on the wings to make them flap, or more commonly to pull on the thorax to distort the shape of the exoskeleton so that it causes the wings to flex up and down on a fulcrum. In more advanced groups, the wings are linked together mechanically in various ways, so they function as a single wing. This ability to fly has allowed insects to take advantage of many more resources than they could get to by just walking, and therefore has allowed them to expand their numbers and diversity of lifestyles. And just like with legs and antennae, insect wings are diverse in size and shape, being modified in different ways. The true flies, such as this flower fly in the upper left corner, have only 1 pair of wings, with the second pair reduced to little nubbins called halteres. Butterflies and moths have colorful scales covering the membranous blades, while the 4 wings of beetles have become hardened or leathery to protect the abdomen, leaving the second pair of wings used for flying folded up underneath when not in use.